This happened just a few months ago. I was looking for a break. As a freelance graphic designer, my life had become a blur of deadlines and screens. I rented a cabin deep in the forest. I thought some time away would help me recharge. The cabin was cute with creaky wooden floors and a small fireplace. I felt okay at first. Maybe even peaceful. But that peace wouldn't last. On my second night, I heard footsteps outside. They sounded heavy, like a person moving around on the porch. I dismissed it, thinking maybe it was just an animal. I didn't want to overreact. When I looked through the window, I couldn't see anything. Only darkness and trees bending in the wind. I felt a chill but brushed it off. I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up feeling uneasy. I thought about those footsteps during breakfast. Had I dreamed it? I wrote it off as my imagination. But later, as I sat by the fire, I heard knocking. It was soft but steady, like someone rapping on wood. I told myself it was the wind or the house settling. Yet, my heart raced again that night. Day after day, things got weirder. The footsteps returned, and I even saw shadowy shapes darting between trees. I was sure I'd left my jacket on the chair, but it was always shifted slightly. My laptop was a few inches away from where I'd left it. I thought, maybe I was just forgetful. I was alone, after all. One night, the knocking grew louder. I felt this strange weight in the air, like something was watching me. Was it the isolation? I tried to ignore it. It was making me paranoid. Each night I glanced out, I thought I caught movement. Shadows seemed to fade just as I looked at them. It all felt wrong. Then, one night, it went silent. I was lying in bed, and all I could hear was the echo of my own breathing. I needed to know what was happening outside. I stepped onto the porch, and my heart dropped. There, at the tree lean, stood a figure. I could barely make it out, but it felt alive. My blood ran cold. It turned, and in an instant, it vanished into the shadows. I stood frozen, unsure of what to do. What was that? Was it real? I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I went back inside. I peeked through the window, but I saw nothing but darkness and trees. The cabin felt so lonely now, and all I wanted was to leave. But I stayed. I didn't know why. The next few days dragged on. I didn't sleep well, and I kept hearing whispers on the wind. Was I losing my mind? I told myself it was just my anxiety. I had to finish my work, but fear gripped me. The final night, I tried to keep busy. I pushed myself to work on my graphics, but the knocking returned, louder and more demanding. My hands trembled on the keyboard. I couldn't shake the feeling I was not alone. I realized, I didn't know what was really out there, hidden in the trees. So I'm left wondering. What really lay beyond those trees? That weekend is still a blur. I can't explain what happened. All I know is, I can still feel the weight of those shadows chasing me. I hardly slept a wink that night. Each creak of the cabin felt amplified, as if every sound was amplified by my racing thoughts. I stared at the ceiling, counting seconds until morning. But when dawn finally broke, it didn't bring me comfort. The sun spilled light into the cabin, but it felt somehow hollow, not the warmth I expected. I decided to venture outside. I needed to clear my head and shake off this persistent fear. As I stepped onto the porch, a cold breeze brushed against me. The world looked normal, birds chirping, branches swaying gently. But something wasn't right. I looked around, half expecting to see that dark figure again. Then I noticed it. In the dirt beside the cabin, there were footprints. They weren't mine. They were bigger than my size, heavy, deliberate tracks leading right toward the door. I felt my stomach drop. Had someone really been here? I swallowed hard, trying to convince myself it was just some animal, but the shape was wrong. I bent down to inspect them. There were no signs of animal tracks. Just the strange, heavy imprint of boots pressed into the earth. Panic bubbled up. I dashed back inside and locked the door. My heart raced. I had to leave, but I was too far out to get back to civilization without a car. Then I noticed the laptop on the table. It lit up, the screen filled with the latest graphic design draft I'd been working on. I hadn't touched it in hours. I rubbed my eyes and walked closer. That's when I saw it. A new layer had appeared on my design, one I didn't add. It was a drawing of that dark figure, the same one I'd seen the night before, but with haunting, sunken eyes. My stomach twisted at the sight. I didn't know if I was dreaming or losing my grip on reality. I closed the laptop, hoping to escape whatever had invaded my work. Just then, knocking echoed through the cabin again. This time it was louder, more demanding. I felt paralyzed by fear. What if someone was outside? My mind raced with images of what could happen if I opened that door. I tried to drown out the noise. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The cabin was temporarily cut off from the world. I dropped it onto the table, feeling a sense of doom wash over me. Suddenly, the violent knocking stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. Was it over? I felt a flicker of hope. But just as quickly, the front door shook violently. It rattled on its hinges as if someone was trying to break in. The sound echoed in my head, sending ice through my veins. I rushed to the window, peeking out. The bright morning light filtered through the trees, but it couldn't hide the figure standing by the tree line. I squinted, and this time I could see it clearly. The dark shape had a form, a head, arms, everything except a face. Just a smooth surface where features should be. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. Someone or something was out there, and it wasn't just my imagination. I felt the walls closing in. I needed to get out. I turned to the door, ready to bolt, but then everything went dark. The lights flickered and cut out. Terror gripped me so tightly that I gasped for breath. This wasn't just a nightmare anymore. It was real, and I was trapped inside with whatever was lurking outside. I stood in the pitch-black cabin, my breaths shallow and irregular. The darkness wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I fumbled for my phone, the glow offered a glimmer of hope, but the screen only confirmed what I already knew, no signal. Panic rose again. What if I couldn't reach anyone? Then I heard a faint rustling outside, like branches brushing against one another. It was too deliberate to be just the wind. My heart raced. I needed a plan, but my mind was blurry with fear. I took slow, cautious steps toward the window, conscious of every creak of the floorboards beneath me. Peeking through the curtain was a mistake. The figure was gone, but that did little to ease my worry. I scanned the tree line, my eyes straining for any sign of movement. Just then, a chill ran down my spine as I realized the door was no longer rattling. It was quiet. Too quiet. I turned back to the laptop, which remained eerily lit on the table. The haunting drawing still lingered in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was a message. I moved closer, the glow of the screen illuminating my face. I opened the laptop again, determined to confront what I had seen. But as I clicked through the files, something unexpected caught my eye. In a separate folder labeled Old Designs, I found sketches I didn't remember creating. I opened one, and my breath hitched. It was a detailed illustration of that same figure. The way it stood, the position of its arms, it looked as if it were reaching out to me. I blinked, trying to shake off the unease. Feeling a surge of determination, I suddenly made a decision. I'd attempt to barricade the door with whatever I could find. If that figure wasn't gone, I needed to be ready. I grabbed a sturdy chair from the kitchen and wedged it under the doorknob, feeling slightly better. Then, almost as if to test my resolve, I heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate. They crunched against the gravel, coming closer. My heart raced again, threatening to escape my chest. I rushed to the living room, my eyes darting between windows, looking for any sign of what was hiding in the woods. Just then, the laptop flickered, illuminating the dark corners of the room. I cursed under my breath. I needed to focus. There was no time for distractions, but the laptop screen caught my eye again. The design had changed. The figure now had a grotesque smile, wide and unsettling, as though it were mocking me. I turned away, desperate to block it out. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang at the back of the cabin, followed by silence. I froze. It was like someone had thrown a rock against the wood. My mind flashed to the footprints outside. Had someone come through the woods? Were they already inside? I felt the urge to run, but where could I possibly go? The front door was blocked, and the back wouldn't provide much comfort either. I grabbed my phone again, praying for a signal, but still nothing. Then I heard a whispering sound, barely audible, but unmistakably close. My body tensed as I tried to make out the words. It seemed to come from just behind the door. I leaned closer, straining to listen. "Let me in." The voice was calm, chillingly so. Something inside me screamed to run far away, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The door cracked slightly, as if it were yielding to an unseen force. I was out of options and running out of time. Just then, I realized the door wasn't the only way in. The windows. I pounced away from the door and headed for the nearest window, adrenaline surging through me, heart thundering in my chest. As I reached for the latch, I could feel the air growing colder, the whispering louder. I needed to get out before whatever was out there got to me first. I pulled the window open, the hinges creaking in protest as I gasped for fresh air. Panic surged through me as I climbed out, my feet hitting the damp earth below. The moonlight broke through the canopy of trees, illuminating my escape route. I looked back at the cabin, my heart pounding. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. I sprinted into the woods, each step away from that cursed place felt like a small victory. The branches scratched at my arms, but I didn't care. The whispering voice trailed behind me, echoing in my mind. "Let me in." I stumbled deeper into the trees, trying to put as much distance between me and the cabin as possible. My breath came in desperate gasps, mixing with the rustling leaves and distant sounds of the night. But the calm was deceptive. I sensed something watching me. Each crunch of fallen leaves felt like a warning. As I moved further into the dark, I spotted a clearing up ahead. I hesitated, unsure if it was a safe haven or another trap. But I needed to rest. I stepped into the light of the moon, my instincts screaming at me to keep moving but my body protesting the strain. The clearing was eerily quiet, with only the sounds of nocturnal creatures echoing in the stillness. Strange silhouettes loomed in the moonlight, wild bushes and rocks twisted in odd shapes. I needed to catch my breath, to think. But as I glanced around, something caught my attention. In the center of the clearing, there was a small pile of stones. It looked intentionally arranged, like a primitive altar. I moved closer, curiosity rising above my fear. In the pale light, I saw markings on the stones, crude figures carved into the surface. They resembled the figure from my sketches, arms outstretched, faces twisted in anguish. That's when I saw it. On one of the stones lay a small, tattered piece of paper. I reached down, my fingers trembling as I unfolded it. The words were barely discernible, faded but chilling. "The watcher waits, the door is key." My eyes widened. The words felt like an omen, a warning. I could feel my heart racing, the voice from the cabin echoing in my ears. Whoever or whatever was out there wanted in. I looked around, the trees looming over me like watchful sentinels. Then, the whispering returned, wrapping around me like a fog. It felt closer now, more urgent. "Join me," I turned, my instinct kicking in. I had to get out now. I was on the verge of sprinting back when a snap echoed behind me. My blood ran cold. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The shadows shifted, and I saw a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, just outside the moonlight. With a grotesque smile stretching across its face, it raised an arm, slowly pointing towards the cabin. The urgency struck me again. I dashed back into the forest, the whispers growing louder. Whatever that thing was, it had found me. I glanced back once, my heart dropping when I saw it begin to move, gliding over the ground with an unnatural grace. I pushed myself harder, desperation fueling my flight. I needed to escape this nightmare, but as I ran, I couldn't shake the realization that the danger was far from over. I had escaped the cabin for now, but the figure was still outside, waiting for a chance to close in once again. I didn't know how long I ran. The trees blurred together, and the underbrush tugged at my legs like 1,000 hands trying to pull me back. I fought through the branches and roots, my breath ragged in my chest. The whispering was becoming unbearable, filling my mind with images of shadowy figures and ancient, forgotten places. Finally, I stumbled into another clearing, but this one felt different. A warmth enveloped it, almost inviting, like a hidden pocket within the darkness. To my right, a twisted old oak tree rose majestically, its gnarled branches stretching towards the sky. Flickering lights danced around its trunk, illuminating an array of objects scattered at its base. Intrigued despite my fear, I crept closer. As I approached, the lights flickered out, leaving me in darkness. My pulse quickened. Something about the moment felt wrong. I crouched low, scanning the ground, and that's when I saw them: small, wooden tokens, each carved with symbols I barely recognized. Suddenly, the whispers died down to a hush. No longer the persistent call I couldn't shake off. Now, they sounded more like faint conversations just out of reach. I picked one of the tokens up, its surface warm against my fingers. A chill raced down my spine as I recognized the carvings. They were similar to the figures I had seen on the stones in the last clearing. Before I could analyze it further, something rustled behind me. I froze, heart pounding in my throat. The atmosphere shifted, becoming charged with an ominous presence. I turned slowly, every instinct screaming that I wasn't alone. A shape emerged from the shadows, the same grotesque face I had seen moments ago. It broke through the trees with a confident stride, arms outstretched. Panic gripped me. I dropped the token and dashed into the protection of the oak tree, using its trunk as a barrier. "Stay with me." The voice was clearer now, seductive and chilling all at once. I pressed my back against the rough bark, trembling. I could hear its footsteps closing in, crunching leaves echoing in the silence that followed. Then everything went dark. I blinked, and the lights returned, swirling like fireflies. They danced around me, almost comforting. As I followed their movement, a figure stepped into view different from the one looming just outside the light moments ago. This one seemed more translucent, ethereal, a haunting glow surrounding it. "Everything is connected," it whispered, and I couldn't tell if the voice was warm or threatening. I felt dizzy, caught between two realms. The other figure continued to stalk closer, a shadowy threat against the shimmering presence beside me. In that moment, the realization hit me: my actions, my sketches, even the symbols carved into the tokens were part of a larger game I didn't understand. The uncanny figure was moving again, and instinct kicked in once more. I vaulted around the oak, darting for the nearest thicket, desperate to escape the two conflicting forces looming over me. As I sprinted into the darker forest, the whispers returned, but this time they shared a secret I couldn't grasp. "The door is key." I rushed forward, each footfall echoing in my ears, the weight of revelations pressing down on me. Whatever was tying me to this curse wasn't done yet. I needed answers that I now realized might be buried right in the heart of that cabin. And I might have to confront both figures if I were ever to find them. I pushed through the thicket, heart racing, branches clawing at my clothes. I needed to reach the cabin. As I ran, the whispers morphed into a low hum, something nearly melodic yet disconcerting. "The door is key," it echoed in my mind, repeating like an ominous refrain. The cabin was just ahead, its silhouette dark against the night sky, looming like a sentinel watching over the woods. I skidded to a halt, catching my breath. The cold air felt sharp in my lungs. Shadows flickered across the walls as if something was alive inside. The front door hung slightly ajar, creaking in the wind as if inviting me in. "Don't go in," a voice whispered, unmistakably different from the ancient hum. I turned, eyes scanning the dark, but all I saw were the trees swaying ominously. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to flee, but the thought of the cabin's secrets held me in place. With a deep breath, I stepped forward. The wooden floor creaked under my weight as I entered. Inside, the space was dim, illuminated only by the weak glow of a fading candle on the table. Dust motes danced in the air, and a musty smell wrapped around me, thick and foreboding. I moved cautiously, taking in my surroundings. The walls were lined with shelves crammed full of jars filled with odd ingredients and strange tokens similar to the ones I found outside. A large, ancient tome lay open on the table. The pages were filled with intricate symbols and sketches that mirrored what I had seen in the woods. Something shifted behind me. I whipped around, a small gasp escaping my lips. There it was, the grotesque figure from before, standing in the doorway, distorted and nearly featureless, only its ominous presence remained. I wanted to run, but I felt frozen as it pointed toward the book. "Find the truth," it rasped, the voice a low growl. "Unlock the door." Before I could process this new threat, the other figure, the ethereal one, glided into view beside me, its form shimmering like a reflection on water. "The truth lies within," it urged in a soft, soothing tone. Confusion flooded my mind. I glanced between the two figures, their opposing energies swirling around me. I had to make a choice. I turned back to the book, my fingers trembling as I traced the symbols, recalling the frantic whispers that had led me here. I felt warmth radiate from the pages, almost pulling me in. As I tried to read, a sudden slam echoed through the cabin. The door had slammed shut with a loud bang, shaking the walls. Panic surged through me. There was no escape. "Go!" The grotesque figure screamed, lunging towards me, clawed hands reaching out. I stumbled back, colliding with a shelf. Glass jars shattered, spilling strange contents onto the floor. The space filled with an overwhelming scent, sharp and acrid. "Focus!" the shimmering figure commanded. "You have to choose." I felt the weight of destiny pressing down on me. What door were they talking about? I caught a glimpse of a symbol on the book that matched one of the tokens I had dropped earlier. That's when I saw it, a hidden compartment in the wall behind the shelves, barely visible, beckoning me. With my heart pounding, I dashed toward it, the two figures now locked in a struggle just behind me. I reached into the shadows and pulled it open, a rush of energy blasting out. I didn't know what I'd find, but the pull was irresistible. As the compartment swung wide, a blinding light erupted. At that moment, everything went quiet. And in that silence, I felt the air shift around me like a long-held breath waiting to be released. But what came next would change everything. The light engulfed me, wrapping around like a cocoon. I squinted, struggling to focus, unsure if the groans of the cabin had faded or transformed into something else entirely. The oppressive darkness dissipated, revealing etched symbols pulsating along the walls. They glowed with an otherworldly energy, shifting with strange patterns that sent chills down my spine. Suddenly, the figures, the grotesque one and the shimmering one, flickered at the edges of my vision. Their fight seemed to slow, almost frozen in time, but I remained rooted in the glow of the compartment, the energy pulling me closer. I was mystified when I noticed a small object nestled within, a key, shaped like the symbols I had seen earlier. The moment I touched it, everything spun. I felt the cabin sway and shift around me, a whirlwind of sensations. The floor tilted, and I lost my balance, tumbling to the ground. The cabin's walls creaked in protest as I braced myself against the floorboards, the sounds of the fight fading to a distant whisper. As I recovered, the key still in hand, I glanced back at the doorway. The figures were now just shadows, their features indistinct but their energy palpable. The grotesque figure seemed to retreat into darkness, while the shimmering one sparkled faintly, urging me silently. "Unlock the door," its eyes seemed to say. I instinctively moved toward the source of their struggle, a grimy door at the cabin's back wall I hadn't noticed before. It stood slightly ajar, as if daring me to find out what lay beyond. Taking a deep breath, I approached, key trembling in my hand. The door creaked open further under my touch, revealing a dark space that felt alive. My heart raced, fueled by both fear and curiosity. I glanced back at the figures one last time. The shimmering one nodded, as if confirming my instincts, and the grotesque figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows. With a dawning resolve, I stepped through the doorway. The air shifted dramatically, colder, more oppressive. A narrow passage stretched out ahead, lined with stone walls that felt wet to the touch. My fingers brushed against the cool surface, and strange symbols pulsated beneath my skin, echoing the markings from the tome. Suddenly, I heard something soft, echoing footsteps behind me. I turned, panic flooding my veins. It was just an empty hallway, yet the sense of being watched crawled along my skin. I pressed onward, the key feeling heavier in my pocket with every step. Further down the passage, I found another door, unlike the last, thick and fortified, with a large lock glinting in the flickering light. I pulled out the key, uncertainty gnawing at my thoughts. Would it fit? Should I even try? As if in answer, a growl echoed from behind me, reverberating down the passage. I froze, the key clutched tightly in my hand. I had to decide: stay and confront whatever lurked behind me, or take a leap of faith and unlock the door before me. The growl grew louder, more defined. The choice was clear. I thrust the key into the lock, heart hammering, and twisted it. The click echoed like thunder in the stillness, merging with the growl just as the door swung open. And what lay beyond was a darkness I couldn't comprehend. That's when I felt something cold, skeletal brushing against my back. I spun around, the chill down my spine intensifying as I faced whatever had touched me. A pair of hollow eyes glinted from the darkness, deeper and darker than the shadows that surrounded them. My breath caught. I struggled to step back but stumbled into the doorway I had just opened. The growl swelled, echoing off the stone walls, its source now circling closer. Panic surged, and instincts kicked in. I bolted through the door, heart pounding, desperate to escape whatever lurked behind me. The door slammed shut, a jarring thud that felt final. I pressed my back against it, the key still in my hand, a reminder of my tenuous connection to logic. Before me, the darkness was thick, an oppressive curtain that swallowed sound and light. As I squinted, shapes began to emerge: shelves lined with jars and books, cobwebs hanging like tattered curtains. It was a room, cluttered yet oddly organized. The faintest hint of a foul odor lingered in the air. I moved cautiously forward. Curiosity mingled with the remnants of adrenaline. If there was something sinister in the passage behind me, perhaps here lay answers. On a dusty table, an ancient tome caught my eye. It was open, pages yellow and brittle. As I approached, warnings layered within sketches and writings leapt out, tales of lost souls, summoning, of entities that dwelled in dark places. Suddenly, the room's temperature dropped even more. I could see my breath, a cloud of white that dissipated quickly. Something was not right. My instincts screamed at me to abandon my search, shove past the door, and flee the cabin entirely. Yet, I was drawn in. Something in the words tugged on my mind, akin to the figures I had seen before. I picked up a jar from the shelf, its contents murky and indistinct. As I tilted it, a flicker of movement caught my attention from the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, and there it was again, an outline, barely more than a silhouette, emerging from the darkness. I froze. That's when I saw it. A long, thin finger reaching toward the book on the table, almost delicately brushing its surface. I felt the air around me grow thick with anticipation. The figure, a remnant of the grotesque one or perhaps something else entirely, was intent on the tome. Without thinking, I lunged for the door, my fingers desperate to turn the handle. It wouldn't budge. Panic surged once more. I glanced back at the figure that stood motionless, watching me. My heart raced. Why was it not attacking? Maybe it had been waiting for me. I slammed my body against the door again. This time it quivered but didn't yield. The figure seemed to take a step back, giving me space, but the silence felt stretched, taut like a wire ready to snap. I needed to get out. Then everything went dark. I felt the weight of darkness envelop me, swallowing all sense of space and time. Panic flared. I stumbled, hands outstretched before me, searching for anything to anchor myself. The air around me felt charged, thick with an unsettling energy. Then, a soft whisper cut through the void. I couldn't make out the words, but it was there, a sound curling around me like smoke. My instinct screamed, "Move." I took a step back, but there was only the door. I strained my ears, trying to identify the source. It felt close yet impossibly far, a lingering echo that sent chills racing along my spine. When my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed the outlines of items on the table. The tome was still there, its pages fluttering as though stirred by a breeze. I leaned closer, focusing on it, hoping to distract myself from the growing weight of dread pressing upon me. The words seemed to shift, dancing just beyond comprehension. Desperation clawed at my throat. I needed light. Then, without warning, a low growl echoed from somewhere within the room. The sound sent waves of terror washing over me. I scanned the corners, and that shadowy figure was back, its presence filling the air with palpable malice. A sudden thought hit me, it wanted something from me. I took a deep breath, forcing my shaky hands to grab the jar I had picked up earlier, the one with the murky contents. I tossed it at the figure. The jar shattered against the stone wall, spewing viscous liquid in all directions. The growl turned into a snarl, and I could see the figure flinch, briefly illuminated by the splattered jar's gloop. Step by step, I inched backward toward the door, my feet heavy with fear. I glanced at the book, suddenly feeling its pull again, that insatiable need to know what lay within its pages. But there was no time. The figure was shifting, its outline becoming sharper, teeth glinting in the darkness. Finally, I found the doorknob, fingers curling around it. I twisted, but still nothing. A desperation shot through me, I pounded on the door, shouting for release. My voice felt foreign in that shadowy space, warped and muffled. I was trapped. That's when I heard a laugh, cold and mocking, echoing from the depths of the room. The sound curled around me, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. My breath hitched. Was this figure truly waiting for me, or was it playing with me, an unwilling participant in its game? Just as I thought the laughter would stop, it grew louder, vibrating through the air. I could feel my resolve crumbling, the panic spiraling into terror. My body screamed for me to act, to find a way out. Then, the lights flickered on all at once. And in that blinding light, the figure stood right in front of me, eyes glimmering, a sinister grin stretching across its face. I stumbled backward, hitting the door hard, a desperate attempt to break free. But with the light came clarity. There were words sprawled across the table. Words I had overlooked in my fear. It was a name, scrawled in hasty scribbles. That moment of realization sent a jolt through me. I could feel it pulse under my skin. I had to uncover the truth. But first, I had to survive. The figure loomed in the blinding light, its grotesque features distorted yet oddly alluring. My instincts blared a primal alarm, screaming at me to flee, to escape its grasp. But something deeper tethered me in place, a pull toward the chaotic energy swirling within that room. The name from the book echoed in my mind as I clutched the doorknob, twisting and turning desperately. The figure advanced, and I threw my weight against the door once more. It shuddered but held firm. I gasped, confusion and fear merging into a dizzying whirl. Then, like an electrifying jolt, I remembered the key in my pocket. Could it be the solution to my escape? Drawing the key closer, I felt an unexpected warmth radiate from it as if it sensed my urgency. I glanced back at the figure, still stretching its twisted grin in the increasingly glaring light, and then to the door, now my beacon of hope. I just needed to unlock it. With trembling hands, I repositioned the key to the lock, the metallic chill giving me strength against the wild unpredictability of my surroundings. The thoughts in my head poured recklessly, colliding with memories of the cabin and the cryptic symbols the figures had breadcrumbed throughout my frantic journey. The whispers returned, a distant symphony, the door is key, find the truth, insistent yet soft against the chaos. The growl from the figure echoed ominously as I slid the key into the lock. It turned with resistance, but at that moment, I wanted nothing more than to leave this terror behind. The door swung open abruptly, sending a momentum of cool air crashing over me. I stumbled through the entrance, propelled by adrenaline and desperation. As I crossed the threshold, a sudden wave of calm washed over me. It was a stark contrast to the seething whirlwind of fear I had just escaped. I found myself in an expansive clearing, the moonlight illuminating the grotesque trees distorting under its glow. I looked around, taking deep breaths to steady the frantic rhythm of my heart. But the echoes of that figure's laughter still reverberated in my mind. I wanted to believe I was free, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all just a prelude to something darker. The woods around me echoed with uncertainty. What had I truly escaped? What consequences would come from unlocking that door? Just as I started to regain my bearings, I noticed movement at the edge of the clearing. More shadows materialized, creeping closer, but not in a threatening manner. They seemed almost curious, shapes slinking just outside the light. Panic flared again. Were they watching? Were they victims or predators? Find the truth, I whispered to myself, grappling with the possibility there were hidden depths to this nightmare. I had seen the darkness, but beneath it what lay beneath those entwined shadows? Were they bound to the cabin, or could they offer insight? For a moment, the urge to approach them weighed heavy in my chest. Suddenly, a soft voice broke the night, whispering through the air. You'll understand. Each word seemed to resonate through the trees, wrapping around me in delicate strands of unseen energy. I wanted to trust it, but doubts gnawed at me. The figure inside the cabin, the darkness it had all felt so real. Are you just like it? I shouted into the void of the clearing. The shadows froze, the air thickening with uncertainty, their presence almost palpable. The voice responded with a soothing calm. We are only reflections. Learn from us, wanderer. A knot tightened in my stomach as I faced the unknown, my mind racing through the events, the symbols, and the door. I had opened something that tied me to this place. The lingering sense of attachment wrapped around my heart with a creeping dread, taunting me with its permanence. With trepidation, I took a step forward. If I'm to understand, I need to know. Show me. It felt like a foolish request, but I was exhausted from the chase, the fear that epitomized the allure of that cursed cabin. With every breath, doubt lingered, yet I felt strangely anchored to the shadows. Then, as if answering my plea, the darkness shifted. New shapes manifested, gliding through the clearing, revealing silhouettes resembling the figures from the cabin, twisting and writhing yet imbued with a sense of purpose. I was compelled to watch, held captive in a tension that felt both safe and terrifying. In that moment, clouds drifted across the moon, shrouding the clearing in thick blackness once more. And as the air grew cold, it all pressed in around me, as if the forest itself sought to claim its next victim. My pulse quickened. Was it an invitation or a warning? I still didn't know if any of this was real or just a figment of my imagination. Determined to confront whatever truth lay ahead or to simply understand its significance, I stepped deeper into the shadows. The weight of my choices pressed on my chest. I had escaped the cabin, but I now found myself standing at the threshold of mystery, unsure if I would embrace the darkness or turn back. I took a breath, poised on the razor's edge between fear and clarity. I moved forward into the unknown, wondering what answers were lurking just beyond the veil of reality or if the journey itself was the answer I sought. Either way, I felt the shadows shift around me as I stepped deeper into their embrace. The mystery remained alive, the questions unanswered and the echo of the Watcher still haunting my thoughts. The balance had shifted, and beneath the weight of uncertainty, I finally surrendered to the shadows swirling just ahead.